A regular meeting of the City Council was held on Thursday, July 11, 2024 at 7 p.m. for the purpose of transacting any and all business. Notice this meeting was hosted on July 9, 2024 at 4:35 p.m. This meeting is being recorded and is live on SATV and Zoom unless technological issues interrupt the transmission. Councilors absent, none. Council President Hafford presided. Council Burrell moved to dispense with the reading of the record of this meeting. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. President Hafford requested that everyone please rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilor Walkenfeld.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Salem City Council honors this land as non-fishing place, where generations of non-picking people took advantage of the Massachusetts tribe lived the past centuries. We acknowledge this is unceded indigenous land and acknowledge the Massachusetts tribe continue to honor and hold this land into the present. Salem City Council is committed to having ongoing meaningful dialogue with indigenous peoples who have presence in Salem in order to dismantle the legacies of oppression and inequities that persist today. Public testimony is not to exceed 15 minutes. Public testimony is not a hearing or question and answer period. Salem must occur 30 minutes prior to the meeting. The President shall depend on the number of speakers and time limit not to exceed 3 minutes, which each individual presenting testimony must divide. We have 5 individuals signed up today, so each gets the full 3 minutes. Up first is former Councilor Arthur Sargent.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Council. Thank you, City Council, Council President, Madam City Clerk. I'm Arthur Sargent. I'm concerned about those B1 changes for a number of reasons. I've been asking around. I haven't found only but one person that knows what's going on, so the word isn't getting out around town that people don't even know this is going on. Second, the proposed zoning change puts liquor licenses in the hands of the ZBA. I believe that's a zoning issue that should stay with the City Council. We elect you, we trust you, we depend on you to protect quality of life in our neighborhood. Also, this affects B1 zoning for the whole city of Salem. Our neighborhoods are not built the same. B1 and B2 zones aren't near each other in some neighborhoods. In my neighborhood is where they are. We have our residential zone, which abuts B1 zoning for mostly retail use. Then you cross Route 1A to get to the large B2 zone, where there are many restaurant uses that would allow a liquor license and other B2 uses. We don't need to add B2 uses to B1. They're right next door to each other, and there's ample opportunity and ample land for each. My neighbors and I are especially concerned about adding more liquor licenses to B1 zoning. Of course, it affects our quality of life, but we're also concerned about the viability of our longtime neighborhood restaurant. I've seen a new Dunkin' Donuts come in on Canal Street, and the coffee shop next door closed. Didn't work out well for the old business. We don't want that to happen to Sea Island and other neighborhood restaurants around the city that are in similar circumstances. Court case law has ruled that you can't buy a house next to a bar room and then complain about it and ask the bar to close. I agree with that. The bar room is there first. On the other hand, it's not fair to buy a house where bar rooms are not allowed and have the City Council change the zoning to allow them. It's also not fair. It's also not fair to someone who bought an existing grandfather neighborhood restaurant in a B1 zone, where you depend on being the neighborhood police, because zoning forbids new liquor licenses. And then have the zoning change to allow more competition that could put you out of business. I don't want my neighborhood restaurant to close. Whether you're a residential neighborhood B1 zoning or an existing B1 business, you did your due diligence before you bought your property or business. You researched the zoning and what was allowed there. You paid thousands of dollars for a home or business. You took out a 30-year mortgage and agreed to pay taxes for the rest of your life based on the existing zoning laws. Is it fair for the City Council to change that zoning and thereby change the value of your investment? I don't think so, and I ask you to please vote against this zoning change. Thank you for having me.
With 3 seconds to spare. Good job, Councilor Sargent. Up next is Jane Stover.
Hi, I'm Jane Stauffer. I live at 1 Washington Street. I'm here about the resident permit parking, and it's actually my friend that I was helping. She'd been sick and in the hospital, and came home and found a parking ticket on her car that was telling her parking sticker was expired. So she doesn't have an internet, she doesn't use email, and I took her down to the parking office on Liberty Street to fill out the paperwork. Well, guess what? It can't be done. If you don't have the internet and you do not have an email, you cannot get a parking permit. So that means everybody in the city who doesn't own a computer or doesn't use email will not be able to get one. I don't think you intended that, but that's what's happening. I wanted you to know that.
Thank you, Jane. Ryan Harriman.
Hi, my name is Ryan Harriman. I own Spitfire Tacos, 105 Lafayette Street. I live on 24 English Street. I'm here to talk about some proposed changes to signage as far as my business goes. We were denied an application to have a blade sign put out, a perpendicular one to the building when we first opened 4 years ago. Because of the store frontage that we have. I think we have about 12 feet of frontage, and I believe we required 18 to have the perpendicular sign. So we're just looking for, a change to that. Basically, we get people still driving by, come in, they say, oh, when did you guys open? And we say, we've been here for 4 years, and they live up the street. So we're just looking to get a little more visibility. I think that we're obviously working within or looking to work within the already set limits of the blade sign. We want to use the local business in Salem, Concept Signs, to install the blade sign. We just need, the rule to be changed. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Charles Hildebrand.
Good evening. I'm Charles Hildebrand. I live at 46 English Street, and I'm here to speak to the request from Crowley for extended working hours. So, first, I completely understand why Crowley wants longer hours. If I were in your shoes, I'd probably be asking also. It saves money by doing work over fewer days. The downside is that it extends noisy hours throughout the neighborhood and adds significant noise and disruption to our Saturdays for the residents. I know it was limited to a 10 decibel increase. 10 decibels is double the sound pressure, I believe. So it's fairly significant. There was also something I noted in there about the expectation for 24-hour operation in the future. And I know during the planning meetings, the informational meetings, some at the Gables, and I have my notes at home, I don't remember the date, it was an early one. Somebody asked about 24 hours, and we were told explicitly that they were planning to only work during daylight hours. So this is actually a big concern, especially where the power plant was 24 hours, but it was up against the harbor, and there was a baseball field up against Derby Street. Here, we're going to have large equipment up against Derby Street with houses right across the street. But I think my biggest concern is the lack of upfront communication with the neighborhood. We found out about this request because somebody found it on the city website. The letter was written on May 24th. Somebody posted it on the Derby Street Neighborhood Association page late in June, which is where I started reaching out to find out more about it. During all the presentations, during the planning board meetings and everything, all the neighborhood presentations, Crowley has been really, really upfront about wanting to be good neighbors. Good neighbors talk to their neighbors. We really would, I probably would have less issue with this had we gotten together and talked about this before they sent a letter to the city council requesting this change. And the other thing also is that, it's like we are not, the power plant construction is not that far in the rearview mirror. And that was an absolute disaster from the residents' perspective. Noise, backup beepers, all that sort of thing. So, looking at longer hours is just, already bringing that up for us. And I've spoken to many people in the neighborhood, and very few of them had heard about this request, and 0 of them were, joyful about it. I would ask that, as good neighbors, that we learn to reach out to each other and talk up front before it becomes official and work out ways to work together. I'm clear that Crowley is doing good work. Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Can I say the part about I'm asking you to vote against it?
And actually, we'll note that due to the way this was at the agenda 2 weeks ago as a hearing, we will allow anyone else who showed up for the Crowley extended hours to speak. We'll suspend the rules. We should suspend the rules very soon in the agenda. So if there is anyone at home or here who wants to speak on Crowley, you will have that opportunity in about 5 minutes probably. And Charles, if you have more to say, you can say it then if you'd like. Up next is Thomas McDonald. Thomas McDonald was on the line, I'm sorry. Thomas, if you are out there, please raise your hand. We will allow you to speak. Thomas, you should be able to mute yourself now.
Can you hear me? Says low hand, please. Hello?
Yep, we can hear you now. Thomas, go ahead. Did you hang up?
Can you hear me at all?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, this is in regards to the certificate of fitness inspections that's put out by the health department. Basically, let's see, what's going to happen is, please, I'm sorry, a little technical difficulties. In regards to the certificate of fitness, the city of Salem, the health department would like to go into the apartments once every 3 years and inspect all the units. In regards to Section 8 tenants, the apartments is already inspected once a year by the Salem Housing Authority and other housing authorities that are different from the Salem Housing. So basically, that would basically yield one inspection every 9 months for the same apartment. And as I'm looking at Section 2705 Certificate of Fitness, it basically says, in paragraph 1, it says, for the 3-year inspection requirement, every 3 years, each rental unit, excluding those in owner-occupied 2- and 3-family homes, or those which have been provided proof of passing the HUD inspection within the previous 3 years. So basically, the Section 8 program is a federal program, and it's regulated by HUD. So initially, I was asking for an exemption for Section 8 apartments from this additional inspection, but looking at the language of the ordinance, it seems like it's already included in there. The other thing too is with the inspections, it's another added burden onto the landlords, and basically our job's hard enough, and I'm afraid once people with this additional inspection, I would also think too that there would be some landlords that would just take the easy way out and would choose a non-Section 8 tenant, which would reduce the affordable housing stock in the city of Salem. So basically, I would like to have the Salem Health Department abide by Section 2705, paragraph number 1, and allow Section 8 housing apartments that are inspected by the Salem Housing Department and other agencies to be free from this additional inspection. And I guess that would be it. So when I spoke to the Salem Health Department, And I've talked about everything. They're still holding firm that they want this extra inspection regardless of Section 8 inspections. So I was hoping for some clarity and a little bit of a help with this one, if you could.
Thank you, Thomas.
Great. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
And that's it for public testimony. Can we turn that? That's it for public testimony. Councilor Jerslow.
Thank you, President. I make a motion to suspend the rules to go out of order to go to page 13.
Councilor Jerslow moves to suspend the orders to go out of order page 13. Seeing no objection. We are on to page 13, motions, orders, and resolutions. Councilor Jerslow.
Thank you, President Hapworth. I make a motion to suspend the rules to allow anyone to speak regarding the petition from Crowley for extended hours.
Real quick, Councilor Jerslow, just if you want to read what we're on right now, and then we'll suspend the rules again after that. Thank you.
Held from the last meeting, the petition from Jared Kemp, project manager, Crowley, for extended hours of construction for the Salem Wind Port located at 67 Derby Street. I make a motion to suspend the rules.
You would make a motion to either grant or deny.
I make a motion to grant, but with conditions.
Okay. So Councilor Jerslow moves to grant with conditions, and then she also moves to suspend the rules to allow members of the public to speak. And again, this is because this was posted as a hearing initially, as a mistake on the previous agenda. So anybody who has tuned in today or with the intention of speaking in a public hearing, we have suspended the rules to allow you to do that. That includes members of Crowley and their council and members of the public. So if there's anyone appearing, I guess we can just say appearing in favor right now, if you want to make your way to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council, Joseph Correnti, attorney with Correnti Kolick, 70 Washington Street here in Salem, representing the Crowley development team. With me this evening are members of Crowley, Joe St. Pierre and John Berry, as well as others that you'll hear from in a minute. We'd like to do about a 10 to 12 minute overview of what the request is, and then answer any questions. If we could do that. The reason we are here this evening and have filed this application is because we're requesting construction hours outside of what is permitted by the ordinance that includes what people typically refer to as noisy work. If you look at the ordinance, the building inspector has latitude in granting extensions of construction hours when it does not involve blasting, rock crushing, or pile driving. If the request involves one of those three items, and in Crowley's instance, we're talking about pile driving, then the city council, rather than being informed of the building inspector's decision, has the application come before it for a vote. So that's why we're here, because we are asking to extend beyond the normal hours for the purposes of pile driving. Joe St. Pierre has prepared a handout. Joe is the terminal manager at our site down on Derby and Ford Ave, and prepared this small handout, which is in front of you. We have a couple extras, if I may just put them on the table. It's just 4 pages, but it quickly outlines what we're asking. So if I could just ask Joe to come up and hit those high points, and we'll keep this moving quickly for you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grady.
Mr. President, councilors, thank you for the opportunity. So as Attorney Correnti said, we are requesting for extended work hours due to the nature of our work, which is pile driving. The request that what we are requesting essentially is for work to be able to be done on the site from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday, with the caveat that from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. there'll be no pile driving that happens at that time. The reason that we're requesting this is to really minimize the impact on the community. We want to get this work done as quickly as possible in as short of amount of time as possible. Additionally, there's going to be about 150 union workers that will be assigned to this project. We'd like to get them on site and able to do their work before the school buses and the local folks are commuting, so sort of before the morning rush hour. Important to note that these workers will be all able to park on our site. We have about 200 or so spots, parking spots that are on our site, so no parking along Derby or Fort. The increased work hours, again, will allow us to expedite the completion of the project. Estimates, without the work hours, estimates are about 18 months or so, and we're projecting that with the extended ability to work, we can reduce that to something like 10 or 12 months. So significant increase or decrease rather in the amount of time. We will need to maintain that flexibility around the work hours, especially around the concrete pouring process. That process, of course, is not as noisy as the pile driving, but still important to note. And we're really striving to maintain that, to limit the noisy work as much as possible. But of course, pile driving is pile driving, and this is a marine operation, and it's required to satisfy sort of the mission. So with that, I'd like to introduce my colleague Joseph Choi. Joe comes to Crowley recently. He is the construction project manager for our operation. He will oversee. He'll be our liaison between Crowley Wind Services and our contractor that will be doing the work. Again, it comes to us with extensive heavy civil construction background. So, Mr. Choi.
Hello, Joe Choi of Crowley, the development of Salem Wind. I'm mainly speaking to the second page, if you guys want to turn to that. Going over the noisy work in general, which has been characterized as primarily pile driving. Of course, there's going to be other activities such as concrete work, some excavation, regrading, and some utility work as well. So, I mean, focusing on the pile driving, just wanted to clarify that, yeah, with the extended work hours, we will be able to expedite the construction, potentially increasing the productivity, reducing the time by 4 to 6 months. The activities are intended to start in Q1 of next year. So with the accelerated or the additional time, we could presumably get through that activity over the course of only going through one summer. As opposed to, if we are a little bit more restricted without the opportunity to work that extra hour, it could potentially extend into a second summer. So just wanted to bring that up. And then in addition, in comparison to the power plant, there was approximately 2,500 piles installed there. We're looking at almost a third of that, so about 800. And of that third, 40% of the work is going to be drilling, which is much less noisy than the pile driving itself. So I know everybody's very concerned about what happened at the power plant, but just wanted to give you guys a little bit of context that, we're working at a third of the amount of pile driving, and almost half of that is going to be drilling and not as noisy as the pile driving would be. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. And Mr. President, if we could have John Berry from Crowley come up. John will address the second part of the request. This is broken into two parts. One's the construction hours request for extended construction hours. And also you'll note that there's a request for the operational hours, more of a recognition of the operational hours. And we'll explain what that means as far as, the operation itself and why that's necessary. And John will also talk about the community reach out that's taken place and will take place continuously.
Thanks, Joe. Mr. President and council members, appreciate the opportunity to address these items. This is very important, obviously, to the project and I think overall to the community. And with respect to the operational activities, this is something that we have been really out front with from the very beginning. It was discussed at length during, in particular at the planning board, with around the lighting situation. So the nature of this marine business requires that we need to have that flexibility to be able to accept vessels into the port, potentially around tidal restricted windows, and that really is what drives that type of activity. It is important to note that we're again asking for that flexibility to maintain that opportunity to work 24/7, 365. However, we are finding as we've been collaborating with other ports that are doing similar work, they're not really requiring to do anything more than usually 2 shifts at the most, and that's been a sort of a recent occurrence. So a lot of times this work is restricted to daylight hours. We do need to maintain that flexibility, and we wanted to be very upfront about that request so it would not come as a surprise. On that note, with respect to not trying to surprise anyone, I think that, you know, we have really worked very, very hard throughout the beginning of this project until this time to get out in front of the community. And to that note, very recently around this work hours request, we were in front of the Willows Neighborhood Group and also the Historic Derby Street Neighborhood Group and presented this request exactly as we're presenting it here tonight. Furthermore, we also did an open public meeting virtually that was also promoted, and we did discuss these extended work hours requests during that time. So again, and lastly on that, we do have the website, we've got the hotline, we're really trying to be a real open book and a great community member. That's really our important activity here at the Port of Salem. That's it.
Mr. President, that's the conclusion of what we wanted to present. Thank you for allowing us to do that, and certainly we're available for any questions.
Thank you. Before we get to questions from the council, I do want to allow anyone from the public who'd like to speak the opportunity. So if anybody wants to, if anybody's here in the chamber and would like to come to the podium and give some public testimony, you're welcome to. Anybody on Zoom who would like to, please raise your hand and we'll allow you to speak. Tom Zahor. Tom, if you want to unmute yourself, you should be able to speak. Tom, you should be unmuted. Oh, maybe not. Hang on a second. Tom, oh, there you go.
Excellent. Thank you. Really quickly, I'll just read through an email chain that I had with President Hapworth and Councilor Jerslow yesterday and today. It's a bit wordy, so I'll try to be quick. First, I'd sent an email when I learned about this. I was on a family vacation and was a bit surprised about the extended hour request. So I sent the councilors an email yesterday. I'm writing in advance to tomorrow's city councilor meeting to voice strong opposition to the request from Crowley to extend construction hours. As a side note, really quick, this is based off the letter that I read that was posted online. So I assume that's correct information, but it might not be anymore. Anyhow, my family is one of the most direct abutters at 66 Derby Street to the site at 67 Derby Street. The thought of pile driving starting at 7 a.m. for 6 days a week is beyond comprehension and not in the spirit of Crowley acting as a good neighbor. In addition, the updated Crowley request is rather egregious. Asking for an additional 5 hours a day for construction is not an incremental amount of time, and I find the reasons given to be a bit of a stretch. 6 a.m. start time would mean crews would be driving in the 5 a.m. hour. Vehicles will be driving on otherwise empty streets, most of which are likely large trucks. I'll kind of skip ahead a little bit and have a special call out that despite the tone of this email, we are big supporters of the offshore wind project. I want to stress that. We are prepared to live across from a construction site for another couple years with the bigger picture of supporting renewable energy in mind. That said, I'm coming out strongly in opposition to any modifications to the currently approved construction schedule. And then I got a response from Councilor Jerslow with some conditions that she wanted to propose, which I think she'll run through shortly. So I'll skip ahead to some of those, to my reply back to Councilor Jerslow, just stating that, going from the approved 8 to 5 construction hours to a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Construction hours feels more than incremental. And I think that sets up any compromise to still be a bit more than what should be acceptable. So then let me think about what else I wanted to say. Traffic issues, pile driving, all those things, I think it's a false equivalence to compare it to footprint, much bigger operation. They were not good neighbors. I feel like Crowley is being a good neighbor. But again, I want to make sure that I voice my my opposition to the extended work hours.
Thank you, Tom.
Sure.
I believe there's one other from the public. Is it Jerry?
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you, Jerry.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jerry Hildebrand, and I live at 46 English Street. Our home is like about 2 houses in from the property where this is all happening, from Derby Street and of everything. And I work at home. I'm a professor, and I work remotely teaching. And the last time when all this was going on with footprint, it was difficult for sound purposes and for just the general shaking of this antique home that we live in during the whole thing. I also am concerned around the level of communication with this whole thing. I'm a social media crazy person, and I work in social media. And I have just learned about this through Charlie a few days ago. And it hasn't been widely distributed, especially amongst those of us who are abutters pretty much, or live within close proximity of everything. For me, I'm opposed to the extended hours, especially for the Saturdays. Saturdays is family time, and this is a lovely neighborhood. And to be interrupting our personal time that most of us only get on our weekends with the noise of pile driving and traffic and all of that feels like a huge imposition. And also when I think about the number of races that are run up and down Derby Street, Webb Street, the whole area on weekends, like it feels like almost every weekend, the impact on those races may be felt also. And I don't think that's anything anybody's thought about. Add on top of that, October with haunted happenings, and it's going to be crazy around here. I'm really opposed to this. I think there are, the lack of communication is really what has pushed my buttons to speak up. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Is there anybody else online who'd like to give testimony? Seeing none. Turn it over to the council for questions. Councilor Merkel. Questions or comments?
Thank you, President Hopworth, and thank you to the Crowley team for being here to answer questions tonight. I have on what is going to be your methods of communication moving forward for the project. You had mentioned, the Willows Neighborhood Association and the Derby Street Neighborhood Association, which are great to communicate with, but I was just wondering if you have an email list that neighbors can sign up for, if something, instead of just, a meeting of what's going to happen over the next month. I lived across the street from a very large building that went up, and it was to get more real-time updates on, an unusual happening, or someday, at certain hours there's going to be excessive noise or just unusual things going on. So yeah, just any specifics you have for your plans for communication, and if you have an email list. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So we have SalemOffshoreWind.com, and we have what we're calling the hotline. That there's a phone number posted on the internet that goes right to my phone. Give me 24 hours or so to return your call, but I absolutely will. And we have been compiling. We do have there's the opportunity on the website as well to be added to sort of an email listserv. And during the construction process, that will be heavily used to sort of update folks on when things are happening. So, yep.
Yeah, and just to add to that, on the handout on the last page, you see the website www.salemoffshorewind.com and info@salemoffshorewind.com, and there's the number that's going to go right to Joe's cell phone. So we're going to have a person that people get to know that Joe lives in the community, grew up here. He's going to answer all the calls and return them. So that's the plan going forward.
Councillor Cohen.
Thank you, President Hapworth. I have a couple of questions for Mr. St. Pierre. Just on notice, not being critical of this, but neighborhood associations expecting people to check out a website is kind of a passive way of communicating. The city has a code red system, and I would encourage you to work through the mayor's office, because they can actually draw like a radius around a neighborhood, and that will go out to anyone who gets code red. And we use code red for, snow emergencies, or, when we're doing street sweeping or something else. And I just want to encourage, in addition to the Willows and Derby Street neighborhood, there's actually a lot of impact in my ward around Pioneer Terrace, Leach Street, where you're familiar. I know you grew up in that area, Green Street. Because of the way the wind goes and everything else, I think there's a lot more impact as far as noise, because there's nothing other than a couple of boats between your site and many of the neighborhoods that go all the way to Marblehead. So I just want to encourage this to be more of a proactive communication. The other thing is, I do want to ask you about notice. So, I do very much appreciate that it's the same amount of work. Whether it's 18 months or 10 months, it's the same amount of work. And I can't speak for people who live in the areas that are affected, but I know in my mind, if it was me, I would rather get that stuff done, as the other Joe said, in a more timely manner. But when you know that you have a serious amount of work, when I used to run logistics for a company, we kind of knew when there was some real trigger points. And it would be great if you know that, hey, next week something's going to happen, you could get a code red, or, however you're going to communicate the variety of ways out, maybe 48, 72 hours to let people know, because your work isn't like consistent all the time, correct?
Correct, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'm not familiar with this code red system, but we can certainly integrate something into that system to notify folks when.
We just encourage you to, code red works like anyone who wants to watch a committee meeting or a council meeting or any kind of meeting, or sign up for any alerts, like I said, any kind of emergency, or if there's like a water break or something, the city will actually send out a notice in English and Spanish. And it can be email, phone call, or whatever, but I think it's more proactive, and I can't commit for the mayor's office, but they're the ones who coordinate it with the DPS or whoever.
Understood.
And yeah, so my number one thing is, to consider is if the work is the same amount, and also I thought that someone said, it might have been you, Joe, that the noisiest work is going to be you're trying to commit as best you can to doing it in daytime hours. Also, in the booklet you gave us, it says that the closest the pile driving would be is 1,200 feet from Derby Street, correct?
That's correct.
Councilor Morcello.
Thank you, President. I just want to say that, yeah, please stay. I will be deferring to the Ward 1 counselor on this and the conditions that she's come up with. I have also dealt with construction in my ward, and it's tricky. It's tricky. People want to build faster than our hours, our normal work hours allow. And especially when there's rock crushing and blasting, it gets to be a lot on the residents nearby. And so I completely empathize with the residents nearby and the noise that they're going to be putting up with. And so it always becomes a dialogue with the neighborhood and understanding the schedule without the extended hours and the schedule with the extended hours. And if that's good for them, then, you know, they'll go along with it with certain conditions. I just want to back up a little bit on the code red system. It's not the city's responsibility to send out your messages. I will say that we have started a policy for blasting that the construction companies need to set up their own code red system, and it's usually a text system. There's tons of technology out there, and then the residents can opt into that. And then you can send out updates at will. It's always a good idea to send out updates when your schedule's changing or whatever, as Councilor Cohen said, but the city can't do that for you unless there's an emergency. And then, of course, the code red system could be used. But there's plenty of technology out there for you to do that, and it's an easy opt-in for residents to just go in there and sign up for it. I would also suggest that you send regular monthly updates on the construction schedule to the Ward 1 counselor so that she can get it out to the residents in that area so that they are up to date on what's going on. That's worked well with construction in my ward. It's always good for people to know what's coming up in the next couple of weeks so that they know what's going on. Otherwise, there's a lot of stories that get started and people start to see things that aren't really there. And so anything you can do proactive is important and it helps take the pressure off for the job. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments from the council? Councilor Watson-Felt.
Thank you, President. As I do the math here, it looks like you currently are working at 45 hours a week, and you're now proposing to up that to 80 hours a week. That's 80 hours of impact on immediate residents, and that, I think, to Councilor Marcello's point, also being in a ward that gets a lot of construction, and even living across the Cove, where, similar to Councilor Cohen's point, the noise does travel. Very rarely from your site, but it has happened. And I just think it's important. I will also be deferring to the Ward 1 counselor's recommendation tonight, but I just think it's important to note that 80 hours of consistent ongoing noise as a baseline experience for neighbors is often more impactful over time than you might think, right? And I think that's, so I'm just basically echoing the Councilor Marcello's comments, but when I did that math, that's a lot. That's a lot to ask of the residents. So I do hope actually that this is a negotiation starting point, and that we get somewhere that works for everyone. Thanks.
Councilor Prosnowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Joe, as you know, we've spoken before about the history that Footprint had with the neighborhood, and I think that everybody is on edge over there because they remember very well, it wasn't that long ago, that Footprint was being built, and it was being built with a completely different atmosphere than what you folks are proposing to do. I can tell you that traffic was a nightmare down there. It was to the point where the police had to hire details because of the parking situation, the disregard for private property, the disrespect to the neighbors by the workers that were working there. There was no communication between the neighborhood and the people that were building it. I I will also defer to Councilor Jerslow's recommendations. I know that you've taken all that into consideration, and I think what the neighbors want to hear is that there's some kind of a transparency process where they know that they can communicate with someone that this is not going to be the same culture that they had to live through before. I know that you're doing a lot less pile driving than what Footprint did. I guess it looks to me about a third of it. Some of it is going to be pre-drilling, which is going to be a softer bit. I'm hoping that maybe the majority of the pile driving can be done during the 8 to 5, Monday through Friday part of it, while other work is being done on the extended hours. But I do want to thank you for your willingness to reach out and talk to everybody around it and making yourself available to answer those questions. Thank you.
Councilor Harvey.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, President Hapworth. In regards to the parking, I know you said that there's 200 and something spots. I know when Footprint was there, and I really don't want to compare your project to Footprint because unfortunately I was on the Footprint project. And the issue they had with parking was, even though there was 200 and something spots for the construction workers to park, a lot of them decided to try to park out on Derby Street or Ford Ave to alleviate sitting in a line of traffic trying to get off the job site at the end of a shift. I guess my question in that sense would be, working with the traffic and parking department to maybe post signs letting the construction workers know that is all resident parking, and we did just raise the fees, and there's going to be no hesitation ticketing the people if they do park out there, being that you do have legitimate parking spots on site for the construction workers. Because that being said, like I said, a lot of guys, including myself, would try to park somewhere else so I wasn't waiting in line behind 200 cars to go down the street. So just wondering if that's something you guys might consider getting involved with the traffic and parking department. Thank you.
There's any further discussion. We can go over to Councilor Jerslow. Councilor Jerslow.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank the Crowley team for coming out tonight. And I have to say, from the very beginning, they've all been very transparent. I've had many meetings with them. They've been to they actually reached out to us all the time to come to our neighborhood association meetings. They never hesitated to reach out. If we had any questions, they would answer them. So I know we've always posted things on the Facebook pages of the different associations. And I can't say enough how the transparency and people that didn't know what was going on, I don't know how that happened because everything's been posted. So I do have some conditions that I would like to put forward. I know they're asking for a Monday through Friday, a start time of 6 a.m. I would suggest a Monday through Friday start time 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. with 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. being quiet work only and no drilling, which you suggested, Joe? The no drilling from 5 to 7 p.m.? Mm-hmm. Saturday start time 8 to 5, but only Saturday work only to be done October 1st through May 1st, where most people are not outside. They don't have their windows open. They won't hear a lot of the noise. A lot of the people reached out to me, constituents, saying that they remember Footprint. There was a lot of dust and whatnot, noise. They couldn't open their windows during the day. So I figured, looking at it, October 1st to May 1st, most people have their windows closed. They won't hear all the noise. And I think a 6-month review once construction starts to be able to amend construction hours if need be. The operational hours, I think we should be discussed at a later date once the construction is completed. Those would be my conditions.
Okay, so just to clarify the conditions, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. with 5 to 7 quiet time. I think that was quiet time was already established, correct? Saturday, 8 to 5, October 1st through May 1st, and then a 6-month review. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Any further discussion?
Yes.
Councilor Watson-Felt.
Sorry, point of clarification, Mr. President. Is there any need to remove anything from tonight with regards to operational hours? Based on what Councilor Driscoll just said? No, okay.
No, it's not. We're not passing an ordinance, so it's just we're approving the extended hours with the conditions from Councilor Driscoll.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further discussion. On the motion to approve the extended hours with the conditions outlined by Councilor Driscoll, which includes Monday through Friday, 7 to 7, Saturday, 8 to 5, October 1st through May 1st, and a 6-month review. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. And Councilor Driscoll, if you want to suspend the rules again, we can go back into order.
I suspend the rules to go back into the order, starting on page 4.
Councilor Driscoll moves to suspend the rules to go back in order to page 4, seeing no objection. Hearings.
The request from Burger King at 259 Highland Avenue for extended hours, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Request from Burger King for extended hours, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Those appearing in favor, please make your way to the podium.
Hi, my name is Ron Dimmick. I work for Master Corporation. We're a Burger King franchisee. We own 39 stores in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine, and we also own the Burger King in Salem on Highland Ave. Burger King in Salem opened in 1983. We acquired it in 2009, and we remodeled it a year after we acquired it. And we're looking for an extension of hours from our current hours of 6 a.m. till 12 a.m. to 24 hours, with the dining room closing at 10 o'clock and only for delivery and drive-through from 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. I brought with me the management team in the restaurant that have a lot of experience. Angelo Martignetti is the district manager who has 18 years of management experience with Burger King. Joe McCadden, who is the restaurant manager for the restaurant, has 32 years of management experience for Burger King, and I am the regional manager for the restaurant, and I have 41 years experience. And thank you for not gasping at that. Which is a total of 91 years, not my total, but all of our totals. In preparation for extending our hours of operation, we've added staff to the restaurant, many of which are Salem residents, and we have ordered additional trash barrels because we have a large parking lot to make sure that trash during the extended hours of operation won't be a problem. And I can answer any questions that...
Any questions for the team here? Councilor Morsillo.
Thank you, President. Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
As you know, we had McDonald's here 2 weeks ago.
I heard.
Did you hear the discussion?
I did not.
Oh, I thought that's why you added the trash barrels.
No.
Okay.
I did try to watch the video, and I couldn't find where McDonald's spoke, so I gave up.
That's fine, because we'll go through the same conditions that we put on that. Trash is the problem. It's 100% the problem.
Right.
Along with seagulls.
Right.
I know you can't control people once they leave your property, but we need to do something about the feeding of the seagulls.
Agree. This came up before with the Board of Health, and we actually posted signs in our parking lot.
There?
Yes, to prevent seagulls from being fed, and that was not prearranged either. Like that took place years ago when it was requested by the Board of Health.
Okay. How many trash barrels do you have around the property right now?
We have 2, and we're going to have 4, so we doubled the amount of trash barrels.
I think you need more than that.
Okay, we can get more.
The idea here is that people are going to go through your drive-through lane.
Yep.
They're either going to go home or wherever, or they're going to go in the back along Highland Avenue, and they're going to eat their meal.
Yep.
If there's no trash can right nearby, they're going to throw it out the window. That's what we're trying to avoid.
Sure.
We need a lot more trash cans along that that back Highland Avenue area where all the parking is.
Yep, we can definitely order more trash cans. I think a lot of our business, though, is going to be delivery, because what we've seen, it's like 60% of the orders after midnight tend to be delivery. It's a large part of our business, but we will definitely order. I mean, that's one of the main reasons why we're staying open, is because delivery has become such a huge part of our business that, and late night is the biggest part, because either people don't want to go out or can't go out, and they just have the food delivered to them. So
it's a current problem, though, right? So even if it's not drive-through, it's a good thing you came here, because
no problem.
We need more trash barrels up there.
No problem.
Another thing is that we just had a trash study done, which sounds funny, but on First Street, between Traders Way and Swampscott Road, because there's a lot of fast food trash that gets thrown there after people leave the places, they eat in their car.
Right.
And so it was weekly, they went out there, they picked up the trash, they categorized it. And so we know all of the fast food wrappers and bags and cups and all that stuff, all right? So there's trash from the fast food, not just yours, all of them, going all the way from the restaurants, along Highland Avenue, down Traders Way, and along First Street.
Okay.
So one of the conditions that the manager from the McDonald's agreed to was to once a month go out, somebody from the restaurant, and pick up the trash in that area.
Okay.
Because it just accumulates, and it's so this study was over 2 months. They haven't been out for the couple of weeks, and I'm already getting emails from people that live over there saying that it's all piling up again.
What is the area again? So I can just write.
It's mostly on First Street. It's like the back of the Home Depot. So if you go out onto Traders Way and then go away from Highland Avenue, there's a light there. That's First Street.
Okay.
And if you take a right there, it's all like, there's no houses on the right side, and that's where a lot of trash builds up there.
Okay.
So that's like a big area, but also on Traders Way, all along Traders Way, there's also fast food.
All right.
So, if you guys could take a day once a month and go out and pick up trash, that would be great.
Sure.
And then also, I'll have your email contact now to invite you to neighborhood cleanups too, because I think it would be nice for the neighbors to see representatives from the fast food places out there also picking up. So that's fine. The other one was keeping attention to the dumpsters and making sure the lids are down.
Right.
I did check with the health agent, who said that there's not a lot of issues with Burger King, but just if you can keep an eye on that, because the seagulls do grab the stuff and fly away with it. So
I agree.
That's another concern. Really, the trash is unbelievable. And I know you're not, you don't have control over people once you leave the restaurant, but
No, but if we can do something that helps improve it, we will. And we'll make sure the dumpster doors are closed and make sure that we have people. We also make sure that there are crew people going out and picking up the lot. Because just because we have trash barrels doesn't mean they're going to use them.
Yeah. So I just want to read through the conditions, and they're the same ones that we gave to the McDonald's.
Okay.
So one is extended hours for a trial period for 12 months.
Okay.
And then you'll come back next year and we'll go through and see, if there's any problems.
Sure.
So the letter for your extension needs to be submitted to the city council no later than the end of June, I think, or the middle of June at this point, for review in July of 2025.
Okay.
Okay, because we need it ahead of time.
Yep.
In order to get it on the agenda.
For next year.
Yeah. So it's a trial period for 1 year.
Right.
Okay. You need to add more trash cans around the property, the outside of the property, through the parking lot.
Okay.
Okay? You need to post some signage at the drive-through and throughout the parking lot, not to litter and to use the trash receptacles. And we can get you the wording for that. You can see there's new signs on First Street that talk about, it's against the law to litter. You can use that as a model if you'd like, but if you could get those on the drive-through windows and then, put
Can they be like a sticker that's on the outside of the window as long as the customer can see it?
as long as they can see it and they understand that it's the law,
Sure.
that would be helpful. If you could send out crews one time a month to clean up the area surrounding the restaurant of any trash, and then to also walk down Traders Way once a month.
Okay.
And Highland Avenue, that front area. And then to make sure that the dumpster is covered and closed so that animals and birds can't get to it.
Right.
That'd be great.
I agree.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, anybody else appearing in favor who would like to give public testimony? Nobody in the chambers. Anybody online who would like to appear in favor, please raise your hand and we will allow you to speak. Seeing none. We'll move now to folks appearing opposed. Anybody in the chamber? I don't think there is anybody who's appearing opposed. Please make your way to the podium. Seeing none, anybody online who would like to raise your hand to appear opposed, please raise your hand, we'll allow you to speak. Seeing none. Councilor Morsello.
Thank you, President. I move to close the public hearing.
Councilor Morsello moves to close the public hearing. All those in favor? Any opposed? Public hearing is closed. Councilor Morsello.
Thank you, President. I move that this be granted with the conditions that I listed.
Councilor Morsello moves this be granted with conditions. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appointments and reappointments.
We have held from the last meeting the mayor's reappointment of Donald Bates to the Board of Register of Voters with a term to expire July 19th, 2027.
Councilor Jerslow.
Thank you, President Hapworth. I move to confirm by roll call vote.
Councilor Jerslow moves for confirmation by roll call vote. Any discussion?
Thank you, Mr. President. Reappointment of Donald Bates to the Register of Voters. I ask you to vote in favor of his reappointment. Mr. Bates served on the Salem City Council from 1988 to 1993, serving as council president in 1992. He also served as chairman for the Heritage Days in 1986, and also served on the Board of Assessors from 1998 to 2014, and then served on the Registrars of Voters from 2013 to present day. Mr. Bates is a great asset to the Board of Registrars, and I thank him for his distinguished service to our city.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the reappointment of Donald Bates to the Board of Registers, all those in favor? Any? I'm sorry. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor Cohen?
Yes.
Councilor Davis?
Yes.
Councilor Harvey?
Yes.
Councilor Jerslow?
Yes.
Councilor Merkel?
Yes.
Councilor Masillo?
Yes.
Councilor Prosnewski?
Yes.
Councilor Stott?
Yes.
Councilor Varela?
Yes.
Councilor Watson-Felt?
Yes.
And Councilor Hapworth?
Yes. On the mayor's reappointment of Donald Bates to the Board of Registers, we have 11 councilors voting, 11 in favor, none opposed. The matter carries. Further appointments and reappointments.
We have the mayor's appointment of Gray Marcoux of 40 Bow Street to the Conservation Commission with a term to expire July 8th, 2027.
Councilor Harvey.
Thank you, President Hapworth. I move that this be held under the rules.
Councilor Harvey moves to hold under the rules. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Communications from the mayor.
We have in order that the sum of $1,207,293 is hereby transferred to the accounts as provided below to cover remaining final fiscal year 24 costs necessary to close the fiscal year.
Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, President Hapworth. I move for suspension of the rules.
Councilor Merkel moves for suspension of the rules. Seeing no objection, Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, President Hapworth. I move for adoption.
Councilor Merkel moves for adoption. Under discussion.
Thank you. These accounting cleanup transfers are done at the end of every fiscal year, and we are allowed to do this under Mass General Law. It's done for financial items such as snow and ice expenses, which is most of it, which is typical of each year, and also unplanned increases in expenses. And there is more information on each transfer in the backup documentation from Anna Friedman.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, on Councilor Merkel's motion for adoption, all those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Further communications to the mayor.
With the following 3 orders that are relative to the collective bargaining unit agreement with the Salem Police Patrolmen's Association.
Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, President Happer. I move for suspension of the rules.
Councilor Merkel moves for suspension of the rules. Seeing no objection, Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, President Hapworth. I move for adoption.
Councilor Merkel moves for adoption. Under discussion.
Thank you. These are contractual obligations, as stated in these orders, to fund the collective bargaining agreement with the Salem Police Patrol Union. And this allows us to proceed with implementing the agreement. And it also includes a retroactive wage increase for fiscal year 2024.
Any further discussion? Councilor Watson-Felt.
Thanks. Just a point of clarification. Are we taking all 3 orders in one vote? Because this is, if we look at our agenda, there's 3 orders here, and only one set of voting.
Yes.
Okay, so we're talking about moving to adopt $350,597.04, $339,949.12, and $258,695.31.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the motion for adoption of the 3 orders, all those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Further communications from the mayor.
We have a bond order that $200,000 is appropriated to pay a portion of the cost of improvements at Jefferson Ave and Wilson Street intersection, and this comes from unexpended bonds from, I think it was, 2019, that was previously needed for the bridge at Jefferson Ave.
Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, President Hapworth. I move for suspension of the rules.
Councilor Merkel moves for suspension of the rules. Seeing no objection, Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, President Hapworth. I move for adoption for first passage by roll call vote.
Councilor Merkel moves for adoption for first passage by roll call vote. Under discussion.
Thank you. This was prompted by Anna Friedman's cleanup efforts, and when we receive a bond premium, funds, we're allowed to allocate them for some projects, and we've been sitting on these funds unused for the Jefferson Bridge design, and the mayor has requested they go to the Jefferson-Wilson intersection project. That is a priority with the city and with the public. This is a perfect use of these funds of about $200,000, and we also need to allocate them ASAP. This needs 2 passages, so if the council votes to approve first passage tonight, I will be requesting that we schedule a special summer meeting before the end of July, or we could lose the opportunity to use these unspent funds for this purpose. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank, as the mayor did in his letter, to extend my gratitude to the finance director and the city treasurer and our director of capital and green infrastructure for their due diligence in the debt analysis work that they did, and they have undertaken this over several months and have identified this opportunity to reallocate the funds. And I just really appreciate Ms. Friedman's laser focus on best financial practice. And yeah, this is an important project for safety that's had a lot of discussion, and I'm asking for your first passage tonight.
Any further discussion? Councilor Marcello.
Thank you, President. I'm also in favor of utilizing these funds for the project. I do want to take a few minutes, though, to talk about the current intersection as it's set up. There's been a lot of questions about the tight turn right now from Wilson turning right onto Jefferson. I just want to let people know that this is an incomplete project right now. It's not fully implemented. When the new traffic light is installed and the road is paved and painted, the stop line for the northbound lane or lanes of Jefferson Avenue will be pushed back behind the intersection, behind a crosswalk, so there will be more freedom for cars turning from Wilson Street onto Jefferson Avenue, making that right-hand turn, which right now is very tight. But I understand that there's a problem. We actually, I think, recently just got a claim for someone whose tire was damaged. And so I've been sending suggestions into the Traffic and Parking Department or the Department of Transportation now that, maybe there's another way to configure those lanes coming northbound on Jefferson Avenue to make a little bit more room. It's kind of tight. It would just be a temporary solution. I think they're going to try something, but I just ask the public to kind of bear with us while we figure out a temporary easement of that tight intersection. And it will all make sense when the light is in. Unfortunately, projects like this have to happen when we have the staff to do each part, and right now the traffic lights are just taking forever to come in. I believe now it's targeted for October to be installed. But the city does understand that there is an issue there with the tightness of the turn, and so I just want to make people aware of that. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilor Prosnewski.
I too have received numerous complaints about that intersection, and I know that that's just part of the process, but just to maybe rectify something very simply and very cheaply. I know that the roundabouts that have been put into place, they have these buffers so that if you do ride up on it, it doesn't ruin your vehicle. Maybe if the city or the construction people could put some kind of an asphalt buffer so that if someone's tire does ride up, it does not get, the vehicle does not get damaged. You know what I mean? Like a little ramp that would lead up over it, so that especially vehicles that are towing trailers, they're really having a very, very difficult time, and they're running over it. But if you had that little ramp like we do on some of the roundabouts, at least if they did hit this, it wouldn't be damaging their vehicles. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the motion for adoption for first passage by roll call vote, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Cohen?
Yes.
Counselor Davis?
Yes.
Counselor Harvey?
Yes.
Counselor Jerslow?
Yes.
Counselor Merkel?
Yes.
Counselor Masillo?
Yes.
Counselor Prosnewski?
Yes.
Counselor Stott?
Yes.
Counselor Varela?
Yes.
Counselor Watson-Felt?
Yes.
And Counselor Hapworth?
Yes. Motion for first passage of a bond order in the amount of $200,000 to pay for a portion of improvements on Jefferson Avenue and Wilson Street intersection. We have 11 councilors voting, 11 in favor, none opposed. The matter carries. Further communications from the mayor.
We have the sum of $64,748.60 is hereby appropriated from the fund balance reserved for appropriation free cash to the account listed below for the repairing of Peabody Street Park.
Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, President Hapworth. I ask for a suspension of the rules.
Councilor Merkel moves to suspend the rules. Seeing no objection, Councilor Merkel.
Thank you. I move for adoption.
Councilor Merkel moves for adoption. Under discussion.
Thank you. These funds are for the repair of the Peabody Street Park and the River Walkway. They will be used for the disposal of over 6 tons of trash from the park site, repairs to the turf, repairs to the grass, damage to trees, historical signage, and pay for the fence to secure the site during the repairs. There is a breakdown of these costs in the backup documentation. And of note, these costs are in addition to the $11,000 in cleanup expenses already expended by the Health Department.
Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, President Hapworth. The city's actually had to hire a biohazard team because it's too dangerous for our DPS workers and ROCA and other people to clean up that site. I just want to remind people that because the point has so little green space for kids to play, that park was originally set up primarily as a place that people could bring their kids, and there's a lot of equipment, and they have a special surface, softer surface. They had salsa Sundays and a lot of stuff there, and I'm looking forward to the neighborhood being able to use the park as it was fully intended. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the motion for adoption, all those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Further communications from the mayor.
We have an order of $5,000 to be hereby appropriated from the following receipts reserved for appropriation account to be transferred to the Park and Rec equipment account for emergency funds to replace a 10-year-old pump that is no longer working at Old Salem Green.
Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, President Hapworth. I move for suspension of the rules.
Councilor Merkel moves for suspension of the rules. Seeing no objection, Councilor Merkel.
Thank you. I move for adoption.
Councilor Merkel moves for adoption. Under discussion.
Thank you. These funds, as it says in the order, are for the emergency replacement of a 10-year-old pump that is no longer working, along with other pump work needed at the golf course. It is not related to the charging stations. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the motion for adoption, the sum of $5,000 be hereby appropriated from the receipts reserved appropriation account to the Park and Rec equipment account. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Further motions, orders, and, further communications from the mayor.
We have an order per Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 64, which allows for municipality to pay for prior fiscal year invoices using current fiscal year appropriations by a 2/3 vote of the council. We request the sum of $4,429.07 for outstanding fiscal year 23 invoices is hereby allowed to be paid from the fiscal year 25 engineering department.
Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, President Hapworth. I move for suspension of the rules.
Councilor Merkel moves for suspension of the rules. Seeing no objection, Councilor Merkel.
Thank you. I move for adoption by roll call vote, and as stated, 2/3 vote needed.
Councilor Merkel moves for adoption by roll call vote. Under discussion.
Thank you. This is a bill dated June 6, 2023, to be paid to the Salem Beverly Water Supply Board for our portion of the electricity pump station power usage. It was for the engineering department to pay, and it was missed because it came during a staffing change and the transition between our city engineers, Deb Duhamel and Dave Knowlton, and we never like to see these, but this happens from time to time with old invoices, and they do need to be paid.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the motion that $4,429.07 of FY23 invoices be hereby allowed to be paid for FY25, all those in favor? Any opposed?
Roll call vote. Roll call.
Roll call vote. I'm sorry.
Yeah, 2/3 needed.
Thirds needed.
Trying to get through this too quick. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor Cohen?
Yes.
Councilor Davis?
Yes.
Councilor Harvey?
Yes.
Councilor Jerslow?
Yes.
Councilor Merkel?
Yes.
Councilor Masillo?
Yes.
Councilor Presnewski?
Yes.
Councilor Stott?
Yes.
Councilor Varela?
Yes.
Councilor Watson-Felt?
Yes.
And Councilor Hapworth?
Yes. On the motion to pay for prior FY fiscal year invoices using current fiscal year appropriations, the amount of $4,429.07. We have 11 councilors voting, 11 in favor, none opposed, the matter carried. Further communications from the mayor.
We have an order to accept the donation from Howling Wolf Mexican Cantina in the amount of $1,100 to Mac Park Farm.
Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, President Hapworth. I move for adoption.
Councilor Merkel moves for adoption. Under discussion.
Thank you. I want to thank the Howling Wolf for having the fundraiser for the Mac Park Farm. I've spent a lot of time there over the last few years, and it's an incredible service to our residents with bi-weekly free markets in the summer, and produce goes regularly to the pantry. And the kids that come are fascinated that what they're getting was actually grown there. So I love seeing this supported, and thank you to the Howling Wolf.
Any further discussion? Councilor Varela.
Thank you, President Hapworth. I'd just like to personally thank Howling Wolf and its customers that night that they had the event. The Mac Park Food Farm project is one of the few projects here in our city that is not funded by any department, and it's solely relied on donations. This is fantastic because it's really hard to find funding to do other things to make sure that we can continue to transform Mac Park for our members. And also, it's one of the biggest volunteer activities we have in our city. So glad to see this happen. Thanks, Howling Wolf.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the motion to accept the donation of $1,100 from Howling Wolf for the Mac Park Food Farm, all those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Mayor's informational page, none. Motions, orders, and resolutions. Councilor Jerslow. I'm sorry. We already did Councilor Jerslow. Councilor Varela.
Thank you, President Hapworth. City of Salem July 11, 2024, in the year, an ordinance to amend an ordinance relative to advertising, Chapter 4, Section 4-51, on-premises signs in non-residential districts, be ordained by the City Council of the City of Salem as follows. Section 1, Section 4-51A, the following on-premise signs in non-residential districts are permitted by amending the following. In subsection 4, C, delete the text 18 feet and insert 5 feet. Section 2, this ordinance shall take effect by city charter, and I move for adoption for first passage.
Councilor Varela moves for adoption for first passage. Under discussion.
Thank you, President Hapworth. So give a little clarity to everybody. The reason for this change in ordinance, when it comes to our sign ordinance in the City of Salem, it's very explicit that if you do not have 18 feet worth of frontage, you cannot have a lateral sign, or what people like to call a blade sign. The last time that this ordinance was updated was in 1976. Since 1976, landowners have been a little more creative with subdividing their buildings. Obviously, rent is at a premium, and when you get that, you get smaller frontages of our retail space in our residential districts. What's been happening is there's only, to be honest with you, a few businesses here in Salem that have less than 18 feet worth of frontage. The reason that we want to update this is, as we heard Mr. Harriman today, there are some businesses that would like the opportunity to have a blade sign. And this really comes down to being equitable amongst all of our businesses. Just to note, when it comes to the Salem Redevelopment Authority, the Urban Renewal Zone, and the DRB process, this does not change anything. This does not change anything when it comes to a certificate of appropriateness for the Historical Commission. So this is just a small incremental change to make sure that our smallest businesses, which more than likely are going to have less than 18 feet of frontage, have the opportunity to have a blade sign. Also, just to mention that this also depends on the landlord saying that someone could have that. So there's a lot of barriers to this, but I really truly believe that this will help our small businesses. So that's for tonight. I'm looking for first passage. As this is imminent, these businesses that want to do this, the season's coming up, and we need to make sure we act quickly to make sure that they are permitted to do it. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, President Hapworth. I just want to thank Councilor Varela for bringing this in.
Any further discussion? Councilor Prosnewski.
Just quickly, maybe Councilor Varela would want to explain to the public what is a blade sign.
Yes, so a blade sign or a lateral sign is a right angle sign that is sticking out of your building. There are within the ordinance requirements of how high it needs to be and lighting requirements. So it's just a right angle sign. I know we all see them, and once I started this conversation, you can really tell, like, you don't really notice until you look and you're like, oh wow, most of our businesses have blade signs. But the one other thing that is really interesting about this ordinance written in 1976 is if you're in a corner of the building and you don't have 18 feet worth of frontage, you are permitted to do a blade sign. So it's really about the few businesses that are in the middle of the buildings that cannot do this. So again, this is the intent. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the motion for adoption for first passage, all those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Committee reports. Councilor Morcillo.
Thank you, President. City of Salem and City Council, July 11th, 2024. Committee on Ordinances, Licenses, and Legal Affairs, to whom was referred the matter of granting of certain licenses, secondhand valuables, Circus Lane, 10 Jefferson Avenue, Salem, Mass., has considered said matter and would recommend that it be granted.
On acceptance of the report, all those in favor? Any opposed? Report is accepted. On the recommendation, under discussion.
No real discussion.
On the recommendation for adoption, all those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Further committee reports. Councilor Morcillo.
Thank you, President. City of Salem and City Council, July 11th, 2024. The Committee on Ordinances, Licenses, and Legal Affairs, co-posted with the Committee of the Whole, to whom was referred the matter of an ordinance to amend an ordinance relative to pickup of large items and fees, has considered said matter and would recommend approval for first passage as amended.
On acceptance of the report, all those in favor? Any opposed? Report is accepted. On the recommendation under discussion.
Thank you, President. So that was the meeting tonight before this meeting. The way the ordinance originally came in, it was to set up the bulk fee prices as set by the trash company that picks them up. There was question in committee the first time we met, saying that that wasn't appropriate, that it should be spelled out in our ordinances how much it costs to have a mattress or a box spring or another bulk item picked up. And so the engineering department did come back with prices, and so now the ordinance states, and I'm trying to find where my paperwork is here, that the cost of the mattress and the box spring is $50 each, and other bulk items are
1873.
Thank you, 1873. I don't know where my paper went. A very specific number, $18.73, and that's because that is what the contract from North Shore Carting states. And it's, like I said, it's in the contract. It goes up every year. That's the current price.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the recommendation for adoption for first passage, all those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Further committee reports. Councilor Morcello.
Thank you, President. The City of Salem and City Council, July 11th, 2024. The Committee on Ordinances, Licenses, and Legal Affairs co-posted with the Committee of the Whole, to whom was referred the matter of an ordinance to amend an ordinance relative to traffic, Chapter 42, Section 75, parking prohibitions, tow zones, resident permit parking, has considered said matter and would recommend that it again remain in committee.
On acceptance of the report, all those in favor? Any opposed? Report is accepted. On the recommendation under discussion.
Thank you, President. I think that there's still questions, and now more questions, about the new system and whether we can customize it for Salem's needs and to better handle visitor parking that's less than 7 days. So, I mean, the goal is hopefully to be able to say that you have a visitor there for 4 hours. So we're still, I think that the Department of Transportation is still doing work to understand the system and how granular we can create these visitor permits. And so there's still more questions about how this system is working. And also, I will say that since the new system of applying for your resident permit parking went online July 1st. I think they are learning more, and so I think we will eventually get something that works for the residents of Salem. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none on the recommendation, the motion remain in committee. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Further committee reports. Councilor Morcello.
Thank you, President. City of Salem and City Council, July 11th, 2024. The Committee on Ordinances, Licenses, and Legal Affairs co-posted with the Committee of the Whole, to whom was referred the matter of an ordinance to amend an ordinance relative to traffic, Chapter 42, Section 75A, parking prohibitions, towing zones, October resident permit parking, has considered said matter and would recommend that it remain in committee.
On acceptance of the report, all is in favor? Any opposed? Report is accepted. On the recommendation, any discussion?
Same discussion as the previous one.
On the recommendation, this remain in committee. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Further committee reports. Councilor Morcello.
Thank you, President. City of Salem and City Council, July 11th, 2024. The Committee on Ordinances, Licenses, and Legal Affairs co-posted with the Committee of the Whole, to whom was referred the matter of an ordinance relative to traffic, Section 75A, Article V-A, reserved rooftop parking spaces for temporary pass holders, has considered said matter and would recommend the adoption.
Acceptance of the report. All is in favor? Any opposed? Report is accepted. On the recommendation under discussion.
First passage. So adoption for first passage.
Okay. Got it.
So under discussion, are we there yet? Okay, thank you. So this one was related to the number of spots that are reserved on the roof of the Museum Place Mall garage for certain apartment buildings in the downtown area who have been granted this right or opportunity either through the planning board or the ZBA. Currently, there are up to 176 spaces that are sectioned off on the roof, and residents can buy a pass to use these spaces. But the Department of Transportation has been hearing that the spaces aren't being used. So over the past year, they've gone out, they've looked at the utilization of the spaces, and during that time, there are 104 permits that were issued, but only about 35 spaces were being utilized, give or take, at any particular time. The theory that may bear to be truthful is that people are just taking the first spot that they see in the garage, which is filling up the garage, and then the city can't use those spaces that are reserved up on the top because they are reserved. So even in October, when they have to shut down the garage for parking for people, for tourists, there's still space on the top of the garage. So this is changing it so that there's 50 spaces that are reserved on the top. People can buy their permits. They will be enforced. The parking will be enforced, and we'll see what happens, I guess.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the recommendation for adoption for first passage, all those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Further committee reports, Councillor Cohen.
Thank you, President Hapworth. City of Salem and City Council, July 11, 2024. Committee on Public Health, Safety, and Environment, to whom was referred the matter of ordinance relative to noise control, Chapter 2, Noise Control, Section 22.6, special regulations relative to the Essex Street pedestrian mall and adjacent streets and sidewalks, has considered said matter and would recommend second passage as amended.
On acceptance of the report, all those in favor? Any opposed? Report is accepted. On the recommendation, under discussion.
Thank you. This summary might be longer than the meeting we had itself. The first thing is we had to amend just to make sure that we had the right chapter number. And second, thanks to Councilor Watson-Felt, we did first passage at the last meeting so that we can expedite this to prepare for October. We reviewed a letter from the police chief who would like us to at some point consider some other considerations. Maybe more days and maybe less adherence to decibel monitoring. Councilor Prosnewski did a really good recap because he has a lot of experience monitoring the mall. And so what we basically did was eliminate amplification in October, Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays, except for Halloween, where there still will be decibel monitoring from 4 o'clock until people stop partying. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the recommendation for adoption for second passage as amended, all those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Further committee reports, Councillor Stott.
Thank you, President Hapworth, City of Salem, July 11, 2024, in City Council. The Committee on Community and Economic Development, to who it was referred the matter of outdoor dining existing agreement with Bambolina to occupy 440 square feet of city property for outdoor dining, has considered said matter and would recommend adopt as amended.
On acceptance of the report, all those in favor? Any opposed? Report is accepted. On the recommendation, under discussion.
Thank you, President Hapworth. I'll provide a quick recap for you all. So we originally provided outdoor dining approval for Bambolina Restaurant at 228 Derby Street at our March 28th meeting. And this was public street use approval of 380 square feet. Since then, it was discovered that what was built was larger than 380 square feet. There was a few questions as to what was actually built, which is why it took a bit of time, but everyone came to a consensus of what the square footage was, and that was where we ended up with our one amendment. So instead of 440 square feet, we amended it to 450 square feet. So that is our amendment that we're reporting out, and that number came from multiple measurements from our building inspector as well as an architect that was working with Bambolina Restaurant. Some other details that we discussed in the meeting were a message from the city solicitor confirming that Bambolina was within their property lines. So their outdoor dining deck does extend, I believe, 4 feet in front of the wax museum that is next door, but there was a letter from essentially their landlord giving approval for that. And then on the other side, that was still the same landlord. It did not go in front of the cemetery. So those two items were confirmed, and that's allowed within our ordinance. So those were the main topics of discussion. What I will say is what was not discussed was a pergola, because that was not in front of us. But that is essentially why this matter was in front of us, because a structure was built that was not approved. The building inspector got involved, did the actual official measurement of the square footage, and we had that. That's our part of the process, is the square footage approval. Since then, the pergola has come down. The business owner was looking to rectify the various issues, and I will note that the building inspector also noted that they are doing this with every outdoor dining. So this is our first year with this outdoor dining policy and process that we have, and they are going to all of them to measure to make sure that the square footage is correct. So we may see other ones, other amendments in front of us, because this outdoor dining process was kind of riled up really quickly for COVID, and it was not as kind of official as we are now. It's a lot more official. So we very well may see other amendments in front of us, and I think being flexible and working with those to make sure that we get the correct square footage down and what it actually is, and working to get to a solution so we can continue using this benefit of outdoor dining throughout the city is a good solution. I will note that it was reported out to adopt the order as amended with a vote of 3-2 from the committee. So I'm glad that we're bringing it to the council for a full vote and discussion as well.
Any further discussion? Councilor Varela.
Thank you, President Hapworth. So thank you for the recap, Councilor Stott. And just to add to that, Mr. Haig was able to, let us know why there was a change. And one of the biggest changes in the square feet was when our DPS puts up the barricades, that's not always exact, and they try to get it right. So the belief was that Mr. Haig brought the patio up to the barrier so that there wasn't an obstruction or a void in the ground that could cause a potential for someone to slip and fall. Obviously, Mr. Haig, there's some mistakes made, but it's every applicant has the opportunity to amend their permit, which Mr. Haig did. And I do believe when it comes to the additional square feet, when in referencing the policy, this meets health, safety, risk to the public benefit, and the ADA accessibility. So within that, I think this is a reasonable request for tonight. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the recommendation to adopt as amended, all those in favor? All right. Any opposed? Matter carries. I believe it was, yep. If you want to be recorded, you want to raise your hand if you want to be recorded as opposed. Communications from city officials.
We have the city solicitor submitting the following ordinance relative to the licensing board.
Councilor Watson-Felt.
Thank you, President. An ordinance
Also
relative...
I'll note that Councilor Varela has recused himself. Councilor Watson-Felt, sorry.
An ordinance relative to the licensing board. Be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Salem as follows. Section 1, Section 2-112, Clerk of Licensing Board. Thank you.
Waive the reading?
Thank you.
Councilor Marcel moves to waive the reading. Councilor Watson-Felt.
Thank you. I move that this be adopted for first passage.
Councilor Watson-Felt moves for adoption for first passage. Under discussion.
Thank you, President Hapworth. I had a brief chat with the city solicitor today just to get clarification on where this came from and what the background was. And basically, it's rather simple. There are a number of different kinds of licenses, as we all know. Some have communications to abutters required by Mass General law to be certified mail. Some are not actually required by Mass General law to have certified mail. So what we've been finding is that small businesses that fall under the common victular license have been out in the world in Salem sending abutters certified mailings, and this gets really cumbersome and very, very expensive for a small business owner trying to start a small business. So it has been raised multiple times by small business owners. It was raised actually by a member of the city solicitor's office multiple times, and I think finally, Madam City Solicitor sort of thought, like, this is an opportunity to clean this up, right? I think they finally got into the language and they did some research and they realized that we can really give some relief to these small business owners. So really the ultimate change here is that we are no longer requiring that applicants filing for a common victular license have to notify their abutters, particularly by certified mail. So what that means is they are still requiring that a notice be taken out in the newspaper. They are still required to mail that notice to abutters, but they are now allowed to meet the requirement of having mailed abutters by receiving a certification through the Postal Service, which is they bring all of their notices and their stuffed envelopes and their stamps to the postal office, and the post office sends it out and gives them a slip of paper verifying the number, the quantity, all of that, their addresses, etc. And they can now give that to the licensing board, proving that they have notified abutters, which is I'm going to misquote, so approximately like almost $4 less than the cost of individual certified postal service, which is over $8 a piece. So when you have, for an example, a small business opening in a new location, take the hot dog place across the street, that's a good example where an abutter is within the law is a number of units within a condo building, an apartment building, an office building. There's a number of those, and that really adds up rather quickly. So that's where this came from. I think it's a relatively small thing we can do to give some relief to small business owners, and as I said, as long, in my mind, I support this because I think as long as notices are still being taken out, licensing board review is still the same, everything else is exactly the same, and abutters are being notified, then that's what matters most. Thanks.
Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, President Hapworth. So I talked to a restaurant in my ward, and the difference was between $7,000 and $2,000. The really key thing, the reason I'm supporting this, is because any restaurant that serves alcohol is still subject to the Alcohol Beverage Commission, and they, no matter what, still have to send out certified mail per state law. So this is only for establishments that don't serve liquor.
Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, President Hapworth. I just again want to express that I'm happy to see this come in. Any of these small changes can mean a lot to a small business. It's thousands. So thank you. Thank you for the due diligence.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the motion for adoption for first passage, all those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Further communications from city officials.
With the city solicitor and health agent submitting the following ordinance relative to certificate of fitness.
I will note that Councilor Varela has rejoined us. Councilor Harvey.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, President Hapworth. I move that this be adopted for first passage.
Councilor Harvey moves for adoption for first passage. Under discussion. Any further discussion?
Actually, yeah, I spoke with the health agent, and basically all it's doing is it's changing the wording in the paragraph so that basically every 3 years, all apartments need to be inspected for health and safety unless you actually live in the apartment. It boils down to a lot of people were trying to say that they were renting their other apartment or they weren't renting their other apartment. It was their kid living there or a family relative. And they found that this wasn't the case. And so basically what it boils down to is if you're profiting from that apartment on your property, that it needs to be inspected every 3 years, not just being exempt because you say you live there.
Any further discussion? Councilor Stott.
Thank you, President Hepworth. So I've had a lot of conversations around this with our public commenter tonight, as well as a few owner-occupied properties. I have a lot of B streets in my ward, so they're going through their certificate of fitness. So just a little backstory here. We may all be familiar with the additional ARPA funding that was allocated to the health department to hire an additional inspector to complete kind of this backlog of certificate of fitness inspections for our rental unit to really get a good handle on what our rental stock is. And the health agent has done a great job of really going gung-ho of doing those inspections. With that, it was kind of discovered that the inspections are not being completed as per how the ordinance is written. So the health agent has submitted this amendment. I have some questions on it, though. I'm okay with the owner-occupied one. You know, I do agree that it's still a rental unit. We don't know. I'd like to have a further conversation, though, about the ones that have a HUD inspection every year. While I do understand the health agent's view that this is a different inspection, it's still a fairly thorough inspection that is done annually. And they both have a cost to, or there's a cost to the owner, obviously, for the inspections every year. And then there's also a burden on the tenant themselves, having to allow that inspector to come in and all of that. So I would just like to have a further conversation before we make that change, and they're both kind of lumped together. So all of that said, I'd like to make a motion, or I'd like to motion that this is sent to committee. I'm up to... I'd like to recommend the Public Health, Safety, and Environment Committee. Co-post it since I'm not on that one.
Councilor Stott moves to send to the Committee on Public Health, Safety, and the Environment, co-post to the Committee of the Whole. Second? Is that a second from Councilor Cohen? Are you the second? Has anyone seconded this?
I'll second it.
Got it. Thank you. And you may speak as well.
I'll second it, and I do want to make a comment. So the public testimony by Mr. McDonald, which he had also sent an email to the council, really made me think. I really agree with Councilor Stott. It's for people who served on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board, that was a really important allocation of funds. One of the priorities in our housing roadmap is to have a rental registry, and the best way to do that is to do inspections. And of course, the people who need inspections are the ones who avoid getting inspections. I do want to say this. In my multifamily that I own or occupy, I've had multiple Section 8 voucher tenants. And I do believe that in the committee we can discuss this, but the inspections that housing authorities do on behalf of Section 8, and I've had Salem Housing and Ipswich Housing in my building, are really more extensive than what the city health department does. They actually will, do the temperature of the water and other things that our health agents don't have time to do. So I do think it's worth reviewing that in committee, because I do not want to discourage our property owners from renting to people who are on government assistance in any way, whether it's Section 8 or some other kind of voucher.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, on Councilor Stott's motion to send to the Committee on Public Health, Safety, and the Environment, co-posted with the Committee of the Whole. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Further communications from city officials.
sorry.
Big one.
I was putting notes in the wrong place, sorry. We have the city clerk submitting the following election order for the state primary to be held on Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024.
Councilor Prosnewski, and we'll have Councilor Varela do the Spanish portion unless you want to try to take all of that.
No habla español. Gracias.
Councilor Prosnewski for the English portion, then we'll move to Councilor Varela for the Spanish.
Ordered that the meetings of the qualified voters of the city of Salem be held in several voting precincts in the city at the polling places designated hereinafter on Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024, for the purpose of casting votes in the presidential primary officers for the election of candidates of political parties for the following offices: Senator in Congress for this Commonwealth, Representative in Congress for the 6th District, Councilor for the 5th District, Senator in General Court for the 2nd Essex District, Representative in General Court for the 7th Essex District, Clerk of Courts for Essex County, Register of Deeds for Essex Southern District, and be it further ordered that the following places be and are hereby designated as the polling places for these said meetings. Precinct 1 will be at Bentley Academy at 25 Memorial Drive. Precinct 2, Community Room at 135 Lafayette Street. I'm sorry, that was Ward 1, Precinct 1 and Precinct 2. Ward 2, Precinct 1 and 2, Community Life Center, 401 Bridge Street. Ward 3, Precinct 1 and 2, Salem High School Auditorium, 77 Wilson Street. Ward 4, Precinct 1 and 2, Witchcraft Heights School Auditorium. Ward 5, Precincts 1 and 2, Salt and Salt School Auditorium, 211 Lafayette Street. Ward 6, Precinct 1 and 2, Bates School Gymnasium. Ward 7, Precinct 1 and 2, Salem State College, Salem State University Enterprise Center, 121 Loring Avenue, and be it further ordained that the polls at the said meeting be operated at 7 a.m. and closed at 8 p.m., and that the city clerk be instructed to post this notice as required by law. And I move for adoption by roll call vote.
And
one amendment as a clerical error over here. Instead of for the purpose of casting votes for the state primary offices, not the presidential primary offices. So make that amendment to this written order, please. Councilor Varela.
Ordeno que las reuniones de los volantes calificados del Ciudad de Salem se celebren en los varios recintos electorales de la ciudad en los lugares de votación designados a continuación el martes 3 de septiembre de 2024 con propósito de emitir votos en la elección primera estatal para candidatos de los partidos políticos para los siguientes cargos. Senador en el Congreso por esta mancomunidad, representante en los Congreso por Distrito Sexto, concejal por Distrito Quinto, senador en los legislatura estatal por Distrito Segundo de Essex, representante de la legislatura estatal por el Distrito Séptimo de Essex, secretario de las Cortes por Condado de Essex, registrador de las escrituras públicas por la District Essex Southern, Y ordena además que los siguientes lugares son por la representante son designados como lugares de votación para dichas reuniones. Recinto 1, Gimnasio de Escuela Bentley Academy, 25 Memorial Drive. Recinto 2, Sala Comunitaria, 135 Lafayette Street. Recinto 1 y 2, Centro de la Vida Comunitaria, 400 Bridge Street. Recinto 1 y 2, Escuela Secundaria de Salem, 107 Wilson Street. Recinto 1 y 2, Gimnasio Escuela Witchcraft Heights, número 1 Frederick Street. Recinto 1 y 2, Auditoria Escuela Saltonstall School, 211 Lafayette Street. Recinto 1 y 2, Gimnasio Escuela Bates School, 53 Liberty Hill Avenue. Recinto 1 y 2, Salem Enterprise Center, 121 Lorraine Avenue. Y se ordena además que unas dichas reuniones celebran en las 7 a.m. y serán 8 p.m. y que instauraría la secretaria de la municipal para que publique este aviso como le dije a la jefe.
Good job. On Councilor Prosnewski and Councilor Varela's motion for adoption by roll call vote, do we have any discussion? Councilor Stott.
Thank you, President Hapworth. I'd like to start this off by saying I actually visited the State House today with Girl Scout troop that was here 2 weeks ago. So shout out to our state reps and state senators and all of those that work in the State House, which is this upcoming election. I have to say something, though. My heart is fluttering right now because I just flipped my calendar to September, and September 3rd is the first day of school for a lot of those schools listed. So I just wanted to make sure that that conversation happened. If we don't mind suspending the rules to have that discussion, because I'm very curious about.
Sure. Councilor Stott moves to suspend the rules to allow the city clerk to speak. Madam City Clerk.
Yes, that I had actually emailed the school committee before they set the calendar from the teachers, and they have decided they are moving the first day of school to September 4th. May I ask, did you see that online somewhere? Because I will talk. Okay, because if it's still out there, I would contact superintendents, right? But they are starting first day of school on September 4th. I've had that conversation. Okay.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the motion for adoption by roll call vote, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor Cohen?
Yes.
Councilor Davis?
Yes.
Councilor Harvey?
Yes.
Councilor Jerslow?
Yes.
Councilor Merkel?
Yes.
Councilor Marcillo?
Yes.
Councilor Prosnewski?
Yes.
Councilor Stott?
Yes.
Councilor Varela?
Sí.
Councilor Watson-Felt?
Yes.
And Councilor Hapworth?
Yes. Adoption of the election order for September 3rd, 2024. With the state primary, we have 11 councilors voting, 11 in favor, none opposed. The matter carries. Further communications from city officials.
With the planning board's report relative to the business neighborhood zoning.
Councilor Varela has recused himself. Councilor Morcello.
Thank you, President. I move that this be received and filed.
Councilor Morcello moves this be received and filed. Any discussion?
No discussion.
On the motion to receive and file, all those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Further communications from city officials.
That leaves us with taking a vote on the zoning ordinance itself or a motion.
Councilor Morcello.
Thank you, President. I move that this be referred to the Committee on Ordinances, Licenses, and Legal Affairs, co-posted. Wait.
Councilor Morcello moves this be referred to the Committee on Ordinances, Licenses, and Legal Affairs, co-posted with the Committee of the Whole. Under discussion.
I think that there are some outstanding questions from the joint public hearing, and so I'm hoping to get this meeting scheduled next week and get the appropriate people in here who can answer the questions.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the motion to refer to the Committee on Ordinances, Licenses, and Legal Affairs, co-posted with the Committee of the Whole, all those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Further communications from city officials.
We have a petition from Comcast to install conduits on Federal Street to provide service for 36 Federal Street.
Petitions. Hearing ordered September 12th, 2024. Further petitions.
We have 2 block parties.
Council Morcillo.
Thank you, President. I move that these be granted.
Council Morcillo moves these be granted. Any discussion?
In full disclosure, one is on my block. Everyone is invited. It's in September. But again, I hope everyone enjoys these block parties.
In full disclosure, one is being planned by the other is being planned by my wife. Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the motion to grant these block parties, all those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Further petitions.
We have a list of public guards.
Council Morcillo.
Thank you, President. I move that these be granted.
Council Morcillo moves these be granted. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Further petitions.
We have 1 claim.
Council Morcillo.
Thank you, President. I move that this be referred to the Committee on Ordinances, Licenses, and Legal Affairs.
Council Morcillo moves to refer to the Committee on Ordinances, Licenses, and Legal Affairs. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Further petitions.
We have 3 drain layer contractor operator license.
Council Morcillo.
Thank you, President. I move that this be granted.
Council Morcillo moves to be granted. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Further petitions.
We have 2 drain layer bonds.
Council Morcillo.
Thank you, President. I move that this be referred to the Committee on Ordinances, Licenses, and Legal Affairs and returned approved.
Council Morcillo moves to refer to the Committee on Ordinances, Licenses, and Legal Affairs and returned approved. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Unfinished business.
With the second passage of a zoning ordinance amending zoning by adding Section 8.9 Coastal Resiliency Overlay District, C-ROD.
Council Morcillo.
Thank you, President. I move for adoption for second and final passage by roll call vote.
Council Morcillo moves for adoption for second and final passage by roll call vote. Any discussion?
No.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, on the motion for adoption for second and final passage by roll call vote, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor Cohen?
Yes.
Councilor Davis?
Yes.
Councilor Harvey?
Yes.
Councilor Jerslow?
No.
Councilor Merkel?
Yes.
Councilor Marcillo?
Yes.
Councilor Prosnewski?
Yes.
Councilor Stott?
Yes.
Councilor Varela?
Yes.
Councilor Watson-Felt?
Yes.
And Councilor Hapworth?
Yes. On second passage of the zoning ordinance adding Section 8.9 Coastal Resiliency Overlay District, C-ROD, we have 11 councilors voting, 10 in favor, 1 opposed. The matter carries. Further unfinished business.
We have a second passage of a zoning ordinance amending zoning relative to Section 8.1 Flood Hazard Overlay District.
Council Morcillo.
Thank you, President. I move for adoption for second and final passage by roll call vote.
Council Morcillo moves for adoption for second and final passage by roll call vote. Any discussion? Any further discussion?
No.
Seeing none. On the motion for adoption for second and final passage by roll call vote, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor Cohen?
Yes.
Councilor Davis?
Yes.
Councilor Harvey?
Yes.
Councilor
Yes.
Councilor Jerslow?
No.
Councilor Merkel?
Yes.
Councilor Marcillo?
Yes.
Councilor Prosnewski?
Yes.
Councilor Stott?
Yes.
Councilor Varela?
Yes.
Councilor Watson-Felt?
Yes.
And Councilor Hapworth?
Yes. On second passage of zoning ordinance relative to Section 8.1 Flood Hazard Overlay District, we have 11 councilors voting, 10 in favor, 1 opposed. The matter carries. Further unfinished business.
We have the second passage of a zoning ordinance amending zoning relative to Section 2.2 districts by adding a new district, Coastal Resiliency Overlay District, C-ROD.
Council Morcillo.
Thank you, President. I move for adoption for second and final passage by roll call vote.
Second, Council Morcillo moves for adoption for second and final passage by roll call vote. Any discussion?
No discussion.
Seeing none, on the motion for adoption for second and final passage by roll call vote, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor Cohen?
Yes.
Councilor Davis?
Yes.
Councilor Harvey?
Yes.
Councilor Jerslow? No. Councilor Merkel?
Yes.
Councilor Marcillo?
Yes.
Councilor Prosnewski?
Yes.
Councilor Stott?
Yes.
Council Varela,
Yes.
Council Watson-Felt,
Yes.
and Council Hapworth.
Second passage of zoning ordinance relative to section 2.2 districts by adding a new district, coastal resiliency overlay district. We have 11 councilors voting, 10 in favor, 1 opposed. The matter carries. Further unfinished business.
We have a second passage of an ordinance amending an ordinance relative to the Traffic and Parking Department.
Councilor Morcillo.
Thank you, President. I move for adoption for second and final passage.
Councilor Morcillo moves for adoption for second and final passage. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Further unfinished business.
We have a second passage of an ordinance amending an ordinance relative to the non-discrimination policy.
Councilor Morcillo.
Thank you, President. I move for adoption for second and final passage.
Councilor Morcillo moves for adoption for second and final passage. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Further unfinished business.
We have a second passage of an ordinance amending traffic, Chapter 42, Section 17A, fines.
Councilor Morcillo.
Thank you, President. I move for adoption for second and final passage.
Councilor Morcillo moves for adoption for second and final passage. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Further unfinished business.
We have a second passage of an ordinance amending traffic, Chapter 42, Section 75, resident sticker parking for Franklin Street and Wilford Terrace.
Councilor Stott.
Thank you, President Hapworth. I move for adoption for second and final passage.
Councilor Stott moves for adoption for second and final passage. Any discussion on the motion for adoption for second and final passage? All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Any further business? Seeing none, Councilor Prosnewski.
I move that this meeting be adjourned.
Councilor Prosnewski moves for adjournment. All those in favor? Any opposed? We're adjourned.